Hi, boys and girls. So today, my focus is going to be on informational texts. But before we do that, we are going to do a very quick review of the difference between two types of genres or two types of texts. We are going to focus on literary first, just to review, and then informational, of course. So the first text that I want to share with you is the text Amazing Snakes. Now, just by glancing at this text, just by reading the title, looking at the photograph, that kind of tells me this must be an informational text. It's going to give me true, real information. My first clue is because I see a photograph there of a kind of scary green snake. So I'm going to flip through and see if there's anything else that kind of gives me that clue that it's informational. And right here, I see another photograph. Look at that creepy crawly snake. And look at that sentence. Snakes don't have arms or legs. That is a fact that I can actually prove. I can prove that. I can prove it by looking at the snake. I could prove it by reading another real book about snakes, and I could look it up online. That's interesting. Look at that. I see a pronunciation key. It's helping me say that word. So it says, all snakes hunt prey to eat. You say it like this, prey. So that's teaching me how to say these complicated or advanced words. Sometimes when we read informational text, there are some big words. And there are a lot of other things that we're going to call them now until we get to the big word that are going to help us know that this is informational. So that's my first example. My second example is not an informational text. This is a different type of text. It is called Froggy Plays Soccer. Now, when you first see or read the title, you might think, well, frogs are real. That is true. Frogs are real. However, have you ever seen a frog play soccer before? That would be really cool. But no, that can't happen. So this frog is acting like a person. He is kicking a soccer ball. That makes this text literary or fake. It's a fake made up story because the characters or the people or animals in the story are acting like people. There's another example of that. When I go to the first page here, if I zoom in for this for you, look at that. It says Froggy couldn't sleep. He looked out the window. The full moon was rising. It looked like a soccer ball. Tomorrow's the big game, he said out loud. Ooh, that's an example of dialogue. That means the character is speaking. Frogs can't speak. That would be pretty amazing, but they cannot speak. So that is an example, another example of why this is a literary text. So we gave an example of informational and an example of literary. And now our last book that we're going to talk about is our final informational text on bats. And this is what we are going to be focusing on today. So before I read any type of text, I like to do what's called a picture walk, or I like to skim through it because I want to see if it's not only interesting for me, but is it my level? Because sometimes, I will be honest, Mrs. Bushy has done this before. I have read a book on my Kindle and I'm like, oh, I think this title sounds great. And I start reading it and it's sometimes too hard for me. Sometimes I like to read like historical fiction. Sometimes the information's too much for me. So I'll put it down and I'll try something else. So we're going to do that with bats. So when I'm looking through this, oh, it has a table of contents. That's really going to help me out if I want to just read about a specific thing with the bat. Has beautiful photographs. That's really going to help me understand the text. And it even has captions. So if you look right here, that bat is a flying fox bat. I wouldn't have known that. So I love that there's a caption to help me. There is also, where is that one I wanted to really show you because this really helps Mrs. Bushy out. There is more pronunciation keys, just like we read in the snakes one. If you come over here, Scientists call bats, and there is a word broken up into parts. That is really going to help me when I'm reading. So I don't even have to go any further. I know that this informational text is one that I can read. So let's get started. So before I read aloud to you bats, I went through the book and I picked out some words that I felt were really good for you to know. I'm going to slide my board a little this way. Hopefully it doesn't fall. So here are the words that I really wanted you guys to learn from this text. The first word is mammal. A mammal is a warm-blooded animal. It nurses its young and it has hair. For example, we are mammals. Dogs are mammals. Cows are mammals. And believe it or not, bats are mammals. Crazy! It's like mind blown. The next word that we're going to read about is nocturnal. Nocturnal is an animal that is active at night and then it rests during the day. Pretty interesting. The next word we're going to read about is nectar. Nectar is a sweet liquid made by flowers. A lot of our flowers are starting to bloom now, and their nectar is starting to come out for the bees, and that's that we're going to learn about. And then we have echolocation. Echolocation is a system in some animals where they use sound waves to help with their location. And I'm going to stand up for a second so you guys can see the board. We also have roost. Roost is where bats and some birds rest. And then we have pups. Pups are actually baby bats. That is their name. And the last word we're going to focus on is an ecosystem. An ecosystem is the environment in which living things live. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and read aloud to you the story that is called Bats. And as I am reading, I am going to stop and talk about some of the text features that really make this story easier to read. Let's start. Bats is by Elizabeth Carney. And I am going to slide my screen up a little bit just so I can really zoom in on some different pages for you guys. What's a bat? I sleep by day, I fly by night. I have no feathers to aid my flight. What am I? The answer is a bat. A bat is a mammal. Mammals are animals that nurse their young, have hair, and are warm-blooded. Humans, dogs, and whales are all mammals, but bats have a special ability. They can fly. And then there is the definition of mammal, which we already talked about, and that is an example of a flying fox bat. Here's that caption. Bat food. There are about 1,200 types of bats in the world. Most of them eat insects. Insect-eating bats are usually small in size. There are more than 150 types of fruit bats. These bats are usually larger and search for sweet fruits and other plants. And this is an example of a silky, short-tailed bat, and it's feeding. A few bats hunt for larger prey, such as frogs, birds, or mice. Whoa. Some people think all bats suck your blood. That is not true. Only 3 kinds of bats drink blood. This group is known as vampire bats. Oh, that's scary. They mostly feed on the blood of animals like cows and deer, not humans. Oh my goodness. And there is a caption that tells us that is a vampire bat. Look at that scary thing. But I'll tell you what, now that I know there really are vampire bats, I think I want to look that up on the internet after this. And there is an example of a fringed lip bat eating a frog. Oh, that frog didn't have a chance. Night flight. Did you know that while you're fast asleep, bats are busy filling their bellies? Bats are nocturnal, meaning they're active at night. This way of life, has many advantages for a bat. Insect-eating bats often feast on bugs that come out after dark. Pollen and nectar-eating bats might feed on plants that only open at night. Nectar is a sweet liquid made by flowers. And there is a caption that says, thousands of wrinkled-lipped bats leaving a cave at dusk. And I'm really glad they provided that caption because at first I thought there were seagulls. And I said to myself, why would they put seagulls in a bat book? So I'm glad they cleared that up. And there is another example of the word nocturnal, which we already talked about. Bat bodies. Scientists call bats Chiroptera. I'm glad there was that pronunciation, Kate. A Greek name that means hand wing. That's because bats have 4 fingers and a thumb, just like us. A thin layer of skin connects the fingers. This forms a wing. Bats also have a sensitive nose and big ears. Their big ears help bats see with sound. Wow, it's pretty interesting. And there is a diagram. It's showing us all the parts of the bat labeled. We've got a coat of fur, 4 fingers, thumb, sensitive nose, big ears, sharp eyesight, and wing, just like we read about in the text. Oh, and here we're going to learn about echolocation, which is one of the words we had on the board. In the pitch black night, bats can scoop up a tiny insect with ease. No flashlight required. How do they do it? They make a sound that travels until it hits an object. Then it bounces off the object and travels back to the bat. From this echo, the bat can tell an object's size and how far away it is. This is called echolocation. Funny face. There are some funny faces. Some bats have strange looking faces. Special ears, noses, and mouths help bats tune into and make sounds while they use echolocation. Their faces may look odd to us, but for bats, their features work perfectly. We have a false vampire bat. We have an Amazonian bat. We have a spotted bat and a big-eared bat. And I'm going to just let you guys look at those bat faces. Very interesting. Hanging out. When bats are not hunting for food, they're usually hiding in a roost. It's another word we had. Roosts can be caves, treetops, or attics. Bats pick places that are well hidden and protect them from bad weather. When most bats rest in their roost, they hang upside down. And that caption says, little red-headed flying foxes roosting in a tree. And I have a connection to this page where it said roosts can be in attics. My grandmom and grandpop lived in a house in Lewis, and they kept hearing noises in their attic. And they had somebody come and inspect it, and they had a lot of bats up there that had made a little family roosting area. So they had to have professionals come and take the bats out. Woo, scary. Have you ever hung upside down in a jungle gym? You might start to feel dizzy. Bats have special veins to keep their blood flowing properly so they never feel dizzy. Bats can't take off from the ground like birds do. They have to fall into flight. Hanging upside down is the best way to make a quick getaway. And it says they are bats hanging and flying in a cave. And there is a joke up here I want to read you guys. It says, why did the bat get kicked out of the cave? Because it has a batitude. Love it. Okay, now we're going to read about baby bats. Baby bats, called pups, another word we have, completely depend on their mothers after they're born. They're blind, hairless, and can't fly. They cling to their mother's fur. The pups nurse their mother's milk until their wings are strong enough to fly. Kind of cute when they're little. Bat rescue. Oh my goodness, look at the cuteness. Oh. During storms in an Australian rainforest, wind can knock baby bats to the forest floor. The babies usually don't survive unless wildlife workers come to the rescue. The lucky bats are taken to a bat hospital. The babies are bundled in blankets and fed milk from a bottle. After a few months, they are strong enough to return to the wild. And that right there says rescued bats in Queensland, Australia. They're all wrapped up like little babies. Nature's helpers. A world without bats wouldn't be very nice. Bats are an important part of the ecosystem. Insect-eating bats gobble up millions of bugs. Many of these insects are pests that could harm humans or destroy crops. Bats keep their numbers under control. Other bats keep forests healthy by spreading seeds and pollen. This allows trees and flowers to multiply. Reminds me of what bees do. And this is that is like really the end of the story. This is just bat myths busted. So I thought you guys would find this interesting. Some people have misunderstandings about bats. Here are a few common myths that drive experts batty. Bats are blind. Bats have excellent eyesight. Some bats hunt using sight alone. Some people think that bats are dirty. Bats are actually neat freaks. They groom themselves frequently. Mothers lick their babies to keep them clean. Some people think that bats get stuck in your hair. With sharp senses and echolocation, bats are very good flyers. They can avoid obstacles the width of a thread. And we're going to stop at that one and flip forward so we don't run out of time. And this right here is the Bat Hall of Fame. It just talks about the tiniest bat. It talks about how these make tents to live. It talks about the most crowded place where you can find the most bats. And it talks about bats that have the biggest appetites. So I'm not going to read this page, but I did want to show it to you. And then the last page were those vocabulary words that we already went over on the board. So that is the end of our read aloud on bats. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that those text features that we saw will guide you and help you to learn more and to understand informational text more. So some of those, again, were we had a table of contents, we had captions, we had pronunciation keys, we had photographs. So those are all examples that make this an informational text. I hope you enjoyed the lesson today. Take care, and hopefully we will see each other soon. Bye-bye.